Welcome to the Rhoda Wilson Show, keeping you informed, entertained, and educated. My name is Rhoda Wilson. I'm truly excited about my new series because we've got wonderful guests, interesting topics such as health, wealth, the environment, art, and media through the series. Also, we've got something called The Kitchen, which is all about cooking. So I hope you stay with me. My guest today, before we have a chat to her, is Zhana. Zhana is a publisher and personal growth consultant. Zhana has written a book, which we're going to be talking to her about shortly, and she believes that our personal mission is to surpass your own goals and to go beyond your wildest dream. Zhana, welcome to the Rhoda Wilson Show.
Thank you for inviting me to come on the show.
This is great to have you. Zhana, so tell us, what is a personal growth consultant?
I help people to achieve their goals,
Yes.
and as you just said, surpass their goals.
Yes.
So I help people to identify what is stopping them, what is blocking them,
Okay.
and to transform those blocks. I'm kind of like an anti-coach in a way, because my motto is you don't need a personal coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how do you help people? Give us a process. So if I come to you and say, Zhana, I want to grow. Well, within reason. Tell us, how would you help me?
Okay, well, I mean, we need to identify which area of your life
Yes.
that you want to work on
Yes.
and focus on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I tend to use the same processes. The processes that I use tend to be universal processes.
Okay.
So if you want to work on relationships, you want to work on money or career or health, they'd be the same processes.
What do people normally, what would you say the most areas in people's life they come to you to try and help them on?
Well, probably the two biggest ones are relationships and money. At the moment, everybody's talking about the credit crunch and the financial crisis, and people are very worried about losing their jobs, or people are worried about losing their businesses. So that's obviously, that's uppermost in people's minds a lot of times.
So if I come to you and says, okay, Zhana, I have a relationship problem, I want to change it, I want to grow, what would you say to me? How would you help me?
Okay, well, you see, the way we create our reality is through our thoughts.
Okay.
Through our thoughts and our emotions. So we would look at what are your deepest thoughts, your deepest patterns. A lot of people have worked on themselves sometimes for many years. They might be doing affirmations, they might be doing, positive statements, lots of personal growth work, and they get so far and they get some results. But then they come up against the wall, and I think this is quite commonplace, really. And so what we need to do at that point is we need to go deeper. I talk about that in my book, Success Strategies for Black People.
Yeah. We're going to come to that in a minute, ladies and gentlemen, but we're just going through, I suppose we're just getting a feel and a build up to what is in the book, really. Yeah.
So, so we need to go deeper. We need to go to look at what is called sometimes core conditioning or core programming. To look at
core programming?
It's your sort of deepest beliefs, attitudes, assumptions, and we all have them. A lot of times they...
Is that because of would you say, I suppose that would be because of, is it parenting? Is it the way... A lot
of it starts from a very young age.
Okay.
And it's to do with assumptions that we make about the world. So your mother tells you something, like, for example, a negative thought would be, you can't trust men. Men are not trustworthy. Now, you've got a choice. You can either believe that or not believe that. And either choice you make is going to have consequences, right? See, what we tend to think is because we're told these negative things about ourselves, therefore, that's why we have problems. But the problems actually come because we believe the negative things that we've been told about ourselves, about other people, about the world. We actually have a choice whether or not to keep along the same lines or to actually change those thoughts.
But the negative, I suppose, the negative images we have, it's just to do with a lot of communication around us as well, about the media.
That's right.
I suppose then
That's right.
maybe selecting what you read or selecting people around you.
That's right. And learning that we have a choice. We don't have to believe these things. Like, for example, with the financial crisis. What caused the financial crisis is that people lost confidence in the financial system. It's not the only thing, it's also because people made very bad decisions, as we know. The banks decided to lend lots of money to people who they knew couldn't afford to pay it back. And lots of people decided to borrow money which they knew they couldn't afford to pay back. So it's not just because of lack of confidence, but a lot of it is caused by lack of confidence. So when the financial crisis ends will be when we regain confidence.
You know, it's funny you should say that, Zhana, because I'm a great believer in that. Recently, I believe one of the churches, the Archbishop, said something about the fact that many people that have lost their job actually thought it was a blessing.
That's right.
Because you don't feel that you're in that rat race anymore.
That's right.
You don't feel you have to prove to anybody,
That's right.
you know, that you have this. You don't have to be one of the Joneses, you know, because it's got a BMW, I have to have a BMW.
Exactly.
Because it's got a big house, I have to have a big house. And I think this is perhaps a good opportunity as well, Zhana, for people to have a relationship with themselves. What you say?
I completely agree. I mean, I would prefer it if people could do it out of choice, rather than being forced to take that position.
But do you know how people are like, Zhana? We get so scared. We don't want to make that decision. Yeah. We know it's not the right path. We know it's not the right thing to do. But sometimes decisions are forced upon us.
Exactly. And so we have to make the best of it and see what we can learn from it. And as you just said, it can be a blessing.
Yes.
Because we might be in a position where we're actually trying to please other people. You know, we're trying to please a boss, we're trying to live up to somebody else's expectations, and we're not looking in here, we're not looking into our hearts.
I know, which is quite actually a very important thing. So you go through this with people, you sit them down and you have a chat with them and say to them, this is what it is, and this is the training that you have to give. Yeah. So tell us, I mean, you were talking about the book, you've got a couple of books.
Yeah. Success Strategies for Black People.
Okay.
So I teach personal development courses. I've been doing that for quite a few years. So usually I work in groups, and that's very, very effective because people can work together and people often find they have similar issues.
Why did you say success strategy for Black people? What is different to a normal success book that we have out there on the shelves?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked me that question. Well, one thing I found with my market research, the first time I wrote this book, it was just called Success Strategies. Because it didn't have Black people on the cover as part of the title, Black people wouldn't buy it, even though I wrote it primarily for our community. Yeah, so then I thought, well, okay, what is special, what is different about our experience from other people's experience? Yeah. So one of the things I talk about is the fact that Black people who are from the diaspora were the survivors of slavery. Okay. And Black people from the continent are survivors of colonization. So we have certain patterns that we learned in slavery and colonization, certain particular kinds of self-hatred. I do a lot of work with people around self-esteem and self-love, Black people, white people, right across the board. And with Black people, we have particular patterns which were learned during slavery and colonization.
For generations like this, because I probably, I mean, I was born in Nigeria, but I mean, my great-father would have probably be aware of slavery. Are you still saying that emotion is still with us today?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we keep repeating these same patterns. It's known as post-traumatic slave syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, tell us about this.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Certain particular types of hatred. So like you see, for example, I've heard it said, don't buy anything from a Black business. Black people won't buy from their own.
Do you know, that's funny you should say that, because that's what I hear. But keep going, we'll talk about that, because I can talk for England, I can.
But you see, you know, we've all heard about these kind of things. We've all heard about these kind of things. And it's very commonplace. It's because we've been brainwashed over many centuries to believe that we're inferior to white people. And some of it was very blatant, like the brutality that was suffered by our ancestors under slavery. Some of it is much more subtle, like the media images, for example, or things that children are taught in schools. You know, they're taught about white heroes, but they're not taught about the Black heroes.
Correct.
You know, and so there's all this re-education that we need to do for ourselves and also for the next generation.
But I mean, coming about the fact that children are taught rather certain things in school. But that's because maybe because we don't feel we belong here. Is that something that we may need to train ourselves about and maybe overcome that challenge, that emotional blockage that says, because I meet people that say to me that, well, I don't mind my children's not taught this because I don't feel I belong here. Why do you think that most people feel that way? Well,
I don't know if most people feel that way or not. I'm sure there are people who feel that way, but I know that in the Caribbean and in the United States, African people, people of African descent, were taught the same things. It's not that we didn't belong there, but they were taught about European writers, artists, historians, European inventors. They weren't taught about the African ones. So there was still this same pattern of people being brainwashed in subtle ways to believe that they were inferior. Actually, we were told in the not me personally, but people older than me, the previous generation, were told very clearly, you have no history, you have no heritage, you have no culture, and the only culture that you have is when you met the Europeans. They civilized you. Have you heard this line before? Because I know people in Africa were told this as well, that we civilized you. All the brutality, all the atrocities that were inflicted on African people, that was meant to civilize us. And of course, we were given the Bible, so that was meant to civilize us. We didn't have a civilization before that. That's what we were taught. So these kind of things, you see, we still haven't healed it. There's a lot to it, you see. I'm sure we've all heard these stories, and some people have this in our direct personal experience of in a family, different children, the light-skinned child is treated better, the dark-skinned child gets blamed for everything. That's just an example. And you know, these things, they stay with people for life. They scar people for life. And then they get passed down to the next generation. If you've got parents who have insecurities about being Africans, they will pass those insecurities on to their children. And this keeps happening from one generation to the next until we heal it. I mean, I consider myself very lucky because I had parents who taught me about my history and my heritage from a very early age. But I think that's very unusual. And in my generation, it was probably even more unusual. I grew up in the 60s, so again, I was lucky because people started talking about African history and people started identifying with Africa. But before that, there was not that identification. So, I mean, my mom, when I was a child, told me about Harriet Tubman, and Harriet Tubman has been an influence on my life, my whole life. I've had that guidance from my ancestors my whole life, so I'm one of the fortunate ones, but not everybody has that. So, as I said, you know, we see, if you go to Parliament Square, for example, there's a statue there of Smuts, the man who set up the apartheid government in South Africa. Why is someone like that being honored in Parliament Square? Wow. You see? And black children and white children, they see that and they think that's the kind of person they're supposed to look up to because he's got a statue there.
Let's just stop you there, Zhana, because we're going to take a break, so please do not go away.